all my students and users of this lecture. I am Dr. Lata Rani, Associate Professor and Program Anchor of Banking, Financial Service and Insurance Department at Delhi Skill and Entrepreneurship University, New Delhi. Today I am going to take up a lecture from Business Law BCOC 133. The topic is coercion. Through this topic, I would be explaining you the essence that is required to maintain a contract in a valid term. This is the first topic when we say consent is not treated as free consent if it is induced by first of the method called coercion. Now we need to understand what is coercion. When a person unlawfully threatens or forces a person via some forbidden acts, that leads to coercion. Now here the three most important words are: number one, unlawfully. That means anything which is beyond the legal boundaries. When a person is not following the rules, regulations of legal environment. Second important word is threatens. Just like somebody is forcing a person and making that person uncomfortable to do or not to do something. And that is third, very important, forbidden acts. The acts which are not supposed to be done by the citizen. So when we talk of Indian Contract Act 1872, there are certain acts which a citizen of India must not indulge into, and if they indulge in any point of time, that is causing a criminal penalty. And if that person is forcing some other people, some other person to make a contract forcefully, that is also prohibited one. So we can call it as Indian Penal Code. It means the entry of either of the party is done in a forceful manner. So these kinds of activities are those which are prohibited under Indian Penal Code. For example, if you are indulged into taking a drug, smuggling, smacking, child killing, honoring, or even when you are forcing somebody to be your servant, to be your slave, and that person is under the age of 18. So those kinds of activities are prohibited one. These actions of a person make him or her illegal and unlawful. So when we talk of such activities, these are nothing but coercion. So in a very simple manner, coercion can be defined as any act, any activity, any operation or any event which makes use of threatening or giving a warning to kill somebody, any kind of force which you do to make a person enter into a contract. So in that scenario, the consent of the party is not treated as free consent. The legal body will restrict the obligations of both the parties in this case. So the effect of coercion leads to cancellation of entire contract. So there is due investigation that has been done by the competent judge or the court. But in this whole scenario, coercion is where you are using physical force to make that person to have that contract. Remember, again we are talking of three most important words. That is unlawful, that is illegal. You are actually threatening a person to enter into the contract, and that is against the IPC, Indian Penal Code. Now, when we talk of coercion as a meaning, as a scenario, we must know how is consent obtained by coercion. Through this, I wanted to tell you that when we are obtaining the consent by physical force, by warning to that person that if he or she would not agree to those contract and terms, he or she would be sufferer, either in form of that you at a gunpoint. Yes, these contracts are created. So if you see the instance of any movie where a person is getting a call that your child is under my custody, you have to give me this much amount and you are not supposed to inform it to the police, this is nothing but a coercion. So coercion examples are very common, where we could see that kidnapping has been done and now that person is forced to give the money, or at a gunpoint. So physical force is the underlying theme where coercion consent is obtained. So create a coercion, a person must show that they were forced to enter into a contract. Otherwise, that person would never have created that contract. So onus is that person has to prove that yes, I have not given my consent, but these were the circumstances through which I had to do that task. So it has to be observed that coercion requires the following elements. So these elements are important. These elements come under key elements. So number one, where you are committing or threatening to commit any act punishable by law. So when I use the word punishable, it means civil liability, criminal liability, or both as suggested in the act. It may be the violation of acts of Indian Contract Act, it may be Indian Penal Code. So this is the first element. Second is unlawful detention of someone or someone's property. Yes. So if you are sitting in someone's property and claiming it's mine, and you have your goons, and whenever that innocent person comes to you, you say, you remember, don't enter into it, otherwise my goons will destroy your property. So when you are using these kinds of language for a particular contract, this is nothing but coercion. Very important, it is very crucial to note that the burden of proof lies on the aggrieved party. Aggrieved party is the party who is sufferer, who has suffered loss, who has suffered some kind of health issues because of that physical force. So aggrieved party is a suffering party. So when aggrieved party is sufferer, he or she has to prove, yes, I was not indulged into this contract because of my own choice. These were certain circumstances, these were certain calls that have been made, these were the scenarios that have been used, and those proofs has to be produced in front of judge. So whenever we talk of consent, yes, consent is obtained by coercion through these three key elements. Let us have a broader look onto this. Let us understand with the help of example. For example, there is one party A who threatens to kill B if he does not sign a business contract. Now here I would like to draw your kind attention where threatening is important. Even though it is a business contract, even though it is one of the professional contract, even though it is not violating the IPC clauses, still when you are threatening somebody to enter into a contract, in that case, this is where coercion has been imposed, coercion has been applied. Let's take a look. There was a COVID scenario, and in this pandemic we could see that there was one sector which was flourishing, let's say pharmaceutical. So the sector where somebody was making masks, somebody was selling sanitizers. If somebody is forcing, yes, it is the right time to enter into this. So let's create a contract. So when creation of contract is induced by coercion, it is not a free consent. No matter it is a pharmaceutical business. What matters most is threatening to kill. So when A is threatening to kill B, it means he is forcing B to enter into a contract. So that is clear-cut example of coercion. Second example, A is again threatening to break B's leg if he does not sell his car to him. Absolutely, that is the B's discretionary right to sell a car to someone or not to sell a car to someone. But if you are saying that I am going to break your leg if you are not going to sell this car to me, this is again a coercion. Or another example, X is threatening Y to burn his house in case Y marries C. So when these kinds of examples are taken up, these are nothing but a coercion. So when we talk of coercion, it is actually you are making that person into a contract. You are forcing a person to enter into a contract with the help of these warnings, these gunpoint, these threatening. So these threatening are part of coercion. Moving next, what is the effect of coercion? When we talk of coercion effect, we need to see this is a forceful contract. So this is not a normal contract, this is not at all a legal contract, and this contract is not a valid contract. So eventually we must understand what is the effect of a coercion. When the agreement made is found to be made out of coercion, then this contract would be rescinded, cancelled by the aggrieved party, due to which both parties are released from their obligation. So they are not bounded, they have to be part of that contract. Number one, they have to perform those duties as written in the contract. Number two, and number three, even an aggrieved party can ask for a compensation, can ask for a loss, can ask for a extra treatment which he has suffered because of that coercion. So effect of coercion is very, very simple. This contract is voidable at the option of the aggrieved party. So it would be rescinded, that means that may be declined. The party may say I will not do it, that is declining the offer, declining the contract, violating the terms and condition. Second option is cancellation of the contract, right? So eventually this is how coercion is dealt into. I would like to have certain case in front of you, so that whenever you would look at the judgment of real cases, you should know how that has been handled. There is one case, Chikam Amiraju versus Chikam Shishma. Let us understand what has happened in this case. In this case, a Hindu by threat of suicide induced his wife and son to execute a release of several properties in favor of his brother, which they claimed that is their own. So husband is actually inducing his wife and his son that they, whatever properties they have on their name, that should be transferred to his brother. Eventually wife is not ready and son is also not ready. So when he is saying that I am going to commit a suicide if you will not sign the documents of the property and will not transfer your property to my brother's name. So it was held that if that is giving a threatening of suicide, it amounts to coercion. So in that appeal, judge advocated that it is a case of coercion. So the release deed due to the application of section 15 made this contract voidable. So that wife and son went to the court and court held that it is a case of coercion. So if you are giving a warning that I am going to commit a suicide, I'll be giving it as a warning again and again, you have to transfer your property to my brother's name, then this is clearly a coercion. Same way, another case I would like to have to draw your attention, that is Askari Mirza versus Bibi Jai Kishori. In this case, a criminal prosecution was instituted against a person, and fearing the result of prosecution, he entered into the contract in consideration of the other party abandoning the prosecution. So again, criminal prosecution is not per se an act of forbidden by Indian Penal Code. So here the consent is valid, right? So we need to see if any criminal prosecution is entered and he is aware, that Bibi Jaya Kishori is aware that I would be called up for the prosecution, then I have to abandon it. So abandonment is her right. So in that case, the consent obtained is valid. So what we need to see, if it is just a narration of the incidents and consent has been taken and she knows I would be doing wrong if I would not cooperate it. So criminal prosecution, and she was fearing it but she agreed. So this kind of consent is not part of coercion. So coercion is when somebody is issuing a warning, when somebody is making you enter into a contract through the gunpoint, when somebody is threatening you in terms of breaking your leg, burning your house, etc., then these are nothing but a coercion. Next topic is undue influence. Yes, when we talk of undue influence, it is something where party is in the influence of domination. That means the party can dominate the another person and influence that person to enter into a contract. Still, the consent is not free. That means that is happening against the will of other. So when that consent is against the will of other, but you are actually into those position, you are into a power and position where that person is entering into a contract against his willpower or her willpower, then that is known as undue influence. So you could see when one of the party has a dominating nature or uses its power to work against the will of the other party, that is another factor of undue influence. So it occurs when one of the other party dominates the party in any aspect. So he is trying to take the advantage of his position and his power to create that impact for entering into a contract. So the principle behind undue influence is that the doctrine of equity. It requires a valid proof to file a case. So you should have clear-cut proofs where you could support your points that I was not ready to enter into the contract, but I was made ready to enter into the contract. The theme line behind undue influence is that they are going to create this contract by mental pressure. So mental pressure is that person is wrongfully, misadvantageously using the position and power that he is there in the custody. So you could take the examples which I have mentioned over a slide where it is trustee and beneficiary. Yes. So if you know that you are trustee, so trustee is the one who is custodian, who has to maintain the terms and conditions of Indian Trust Act. But if you are making beneficiary entering into a contract because you have a position, then those kinds of contract is undue influence, is part of undue influence if that is against the willpower of beneficiary. So sometimes husband and wife, we know this is the relationship of fiduciary nature where love, trust, care, affection is present, and if husband is trying to use those fiduciary relationship in his favor, it is undue influence. Sometimes wife is also trying to use those fiduciary relationship for her benefits without the willpower of husband, it is actually undue influence. So these are certain examples where we could see doctor and patient relationship, tender age, or adult child and parent, lawyer and client, parent and child. So all those are actually part of undue influence if they are entering into a contract without the willpower. That means without the consent. So consensus is obtained by using a mental force, mental pressure. So you have to do it. If you won't do it, I am going to fire a case. So this is something when an employee is favoring the boss just because he or she has to save her job. That is where undue influence is applicable. How is consent obtained by undue influence? Now, the main theme in undue influence is having a fiduciary relationship. Like I mentioned, relationship which is based on caring aspect, on affection aspect. So this is where two parties, that the parties who are contracting with each other are having fiduciary relationship. So according to Merriam-Webster, a fiduciary relationship can be defined as a relationship in which one party places special trust, confidence, reliance in and is influenced by another who has a fiduciary duty to act for the benefit of the party. So that means when there is fiduciary relationship, fiduciary action, and you are taking those in a misadvantage form, then that consent is said to be obtained by undue influence. So look at this. What are the two elements which are required? It is either of the party is in the position of dominating the others, dominating the will of the others, dominating the consent of the others, and the party that is in the dominating position should take it for their own benefit, for its own personal benefits. Let's look at one of the example where son is compelling his father to transfer all his property to him. So if son is forcing and father is signing it, yes, that is undue influence. If father does not want to transfer the property. So you could see and relate it with the Singhania case where Gautam Singhania was being charged under this undue influence. So father is claiming that I have given out my property by the influence of that my son is now heading the company. My son is now CEO of Raymond company. Another, when we talk of another example, an employer exerts undue influence on his employee and makes them sell their watch at a very cheap prices. So if employee is doing this, yes, the employee is under undue influence. He does not want to sell it, but since employer is saying and he has to save his job, so he is giving it as yes, those yes is undue influence. Now we must know what are the features of undue influence. One of the party must be in a position to dominate the other, and very important, dominating party must be doing all this to take the benefit from the contract. So that is not looking at the aspect of another party. They are not really caring for the consideration of other party. So this is something that dominating party is doing it for its own personal benefit. What is the effect of undue influence? When any agreement is caused due to the impact of undue influence, it can be considered void again at the option of the aggrieved party, whose consent was so caused according to section 19A of Indian Contract Act. That means when we talk of undue influence, aggrieved party can cancel the contract, aggrieved party can resign the contract. So aggrieved party must collect all the sufficient proofs to prove that my consent was taken up by dominating the position. Relationship which involve domination, like I mentioned, the principle of undue influence is applied where confidence is betrayed. Remember, if they are on the same equal footing, they should have to act as per the trust, as per the confidence. But when that confidence is betrayed, just like a boss and employee, husband and wife, doctor and patient, then the domination is proved. Presumption of undue influence. Now we have to see there are some cases in which honorable court presume the existence of undue influence between the parties. So where one of the party is in a position to dominate the will of the contract and contract is of prima facie unconscionable, unfair. So court assumes there is an undue influence. Look at this, where one of the party to a contract is a Pardanasheen woman. The contract is presumed to be induced by undue influence. So in that case, Bombay High Court made an opinion, woman becomes Pardanasheen not because she is seclusion of some degree, but it means woman which is totally excluded from the ordinary social intercourse. So she is not supposed to show any part just because she is a woman. So Pardanasheen woman is very common when we look at the community of specific religion. So I would like to just draw your kind attention to major case laws. One case has happened, Manu Singh versus Umadat Pandey. In this case, a spiritual leader induced the plaintiff, that is his devotee, to gift him the whole property to get the benefit of the soul in the next world. You know, so plaintiff is who has been aggrieved, right? Aggrieved party. So that spiritual leader is saying, okay, give all the property onto my name. Your soul is free. You will become a person again in the next world. Who is going to see the next world? So it was held that this consent is obtained by undue influence. So it is voidable by the devotee. Devotee may have the right to cancel the contract and take the property back. Another case is Williams versus Bailey. In this case, his son forged the signature of his father for certain promissory notes and paid them into the account. When the truth came into light, bank manager threatened to prosecute the son. To avert this, father mortgaged his property to the bank manager. So then House of Lords, that is Judge of UK, has said the father gave his consent under undue influence and held the agreement voidable because his son was doing all this. So father knew if I would cancel the contract, my son will be in a prison. So to save the son, he gave it, but the consent was not free. This is the last topic that I want to draw your attention. Difference between coercion and undue influence. Look, coercion is a force which is physical in nature, whereas undue influence is dominating, that is mental force is used to create a contract. Nature of offence is, it is regarded as criminal offence and it is covered under section 15 of Indian Contract Act 1872, whereas undue influence is covered under section 16 but it is not a criminal offence. Legal provisions are enlisted as section 15 for coercion, section 16 for undue influence as per Indian Contract Act 1872. When we talk of relationship, there is no need to have a relationship for the coercion contract, but for undue influence contract is already established through the fiduciary relationship. Actions, when we talk of coercion, it is threat, it is warning, it is physical violence, it is force, whereas in undue influence, it is more of mental pressure, social pressure, dilemma. Person is not able to see what is right, what is wrong. The aim of coercion is generally that tool to force a person to enter into a contract, whereas undue influence is using the position and power in a wrong manner to take the benefit. Burden of proof, yes, it lies with the aggrieved party, but here undue influence, it lies with the dominating party. So examples I have given you, that if A is threatening a B that I would kill you if you will marry C, this is coercion. And a teacher on the other hand tells the student to sell his car at a very low prices and I am going to get high return and I will be giving you full marks for final examination. This is undue influence. I hope it is clear. That is how we are going to tackle coercion and undue influence. Thank you so much.